This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and today our guest is James Misner, who is the founder and CEO of the Kipos Group. Over his career, he has facilitated the raising of hundreds of millions of dollars to support nonprofit organizations. A trusted expert in the realm of fundraising, strategy, staff, culture, and implementation, he and the Kipos Group bring a sharp focus on a small and mid-sized organizations engaged in direct service. So, James, welcome to the program. It's great to have you on today.
Thanks so much, Steve. I'm excited to be here and for our conversation.
Well, let's just go ahead and start with give us a little context. Where you grew up, how you got into this field, just a little background information for us before we jump in.
Absolutely. I grew up in the suburbs between Philadelphia and New York City, kind of half on the Pennsylvania side, half on the Jersey side. Um, and I never thought I was going to get into this. No one ever grows up and says, "Hey, I'm going to be a fundraiser or in resource development when I get up." But
Yeah.
as I grew up, I just had this huge passion for marginalized communities. Um, and wanted to do everything I could to help in as many ways as I could. And as I got older and spent quite a bit of time living and working in sub-Saharan Africa, realized my best contribution wasn't my thinking or program chops. It was talking to people who had funds so that other people who were smarter and more equipped than me could actually go and change the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, that's a gift because not everyone can do that. Not everyone's good at it for sure. So that's great that you found that. So you said you lived for a while in Africa?
Mostly traveled back and forth for some long stints. And I
Okay.
ended up marrying into a very large Ugandan American family.
Really?
We
Okay.
have some plots of land over there. The cousins farm it for us. So half the family is from East Africa, and it's become a huge part of our family story.
Wow. Well, not only that, as I also read or heard that you yourself live on a farm in Maryland, right? So tell us about that. Why decide to run a farm when you're also running a business?
Okay, so this is a great question. And the answer to why I still don't know yet, except for the fact that it's really fun. During the pandemic, me and my kids, we had two kids at the time, we have three now. That first spring of 2020, I needed something to do with a 4 or 5 year old and a 2 3 year old. So we planted hundreds of perennial seeds and put them on a table in front of the window. And then when it got warm enough, we dug up the backyard and planted them. And by the time we got to July and August, there were people that were stopping in our yard to take pictures with the flowers. And we absolutely loved it. And last year, we decided we have three kids now, and my wife and I both work from home full time. Like, let's get a bigger space. So we moved to a 6.5 acre piece of land, and we are trying to grow an orchard in the back and a cut flower field on the right. And we're seeing how it goes. I want to get animals. She says no to that still, but we'll negotiate that over the next few years and see how it goes. But we're having
So
fun doing it, even though it's not making us money right now.
that's great. So is it just curious, do you have like a greenhouse to, get the seeds going and whatever, and then transfer them to the ground, or do you just go right into the ground?
So they're going right into the ground right now. I did
Okay.
160 peony plants, peony roots last year. Um, Probably going to do 400 more this year and try to find ways to, set up a subscription service and sell them to wedding florists and that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's incredible. Well, you got your work cut out for you, it sounds like. So, we've talked a lot on this program over the years about building cultures, and that's kind of what I do too. But I'm intrigued to know about building a fundraising culture. I assume it's probably a little different, although the principles and characteristics are probably the same. So tell us what makes a fundraising culture unique.
Fundraising is one of these very specialized areas. I think most people know that. A lot of times we equate it to sales, but there's not a direct equivalence there. These people who raise their hand and say, "Hey, I'm going to go develop resources," generally are very motivated people in general. They are hardworking people and they're deeply passionate people. And one of the challenges in fundraising culture and why it's so hard to build it is because when they're out there representing the organization, because the folks that are doing it are so passionate, they have what I call the dual representation mandate. One, they're representing themselves when they're out there in their own personal story of why they're getting into poverty alleviation or working with immigrants or doing healthcare for, low income folks. They're telling their own story, which most of them have, and they're telling the organization's story. And what happens in that space is that people get conflicted in what they're representing. And the job of a fundraising leader or an executive at a nonprofit is to help them find their way through that muddy path and to create a culture that is based on what I call the three C's. The first is bringing absolute clarity to what the job of that fundraiser is. The nonprofit space is a space that is generally tapped for cash, right? There's not tons of money in it. Um, and people often get asked to do five, six, seven jobs. To create a healthy fundraising culture, the staff need to know with crystal clarity exactly what is expected of them and where their role starts and where somebody else's begins. It's a
Yeah.
huge problem. The second C is they need to have community. As they're going out there and knocking on doors and asking people to, give of their funds to advance this mission, they need to know that they have a community to fall back on. Because the reality is that they're going to get a lot of no's in that job. They're going to get more
Mhm.
no's than the average sales, person gets, whether it's B2B or B2C. And the third C is consistency. They need to know that they're going to be measured the same way as everybody else. When they hit their numbers, they're going to be celebrated the same way. And if they don't hit the numbers, that the consequences are going to be the same as everybody else. And if
Mhm.
people get those three C's right, usually some magic and some fireworks start to happen in a fundraising culture.
Yeah. So just to review, the three C's are clarity, community, and consistency.
That's right.
Yeah. So is the nonprofit world and raising funds for that in a funk right now? It's kind of like we have a very polarized world. We have a lot of different ideas coming out of, who we should help and how we should help them and whatever. It seems like an interesting time in your field.
So it's a very interesting time in the field. And we have to dabble a little bit into public policy and politics to answer the question.
Yeah.
But, we're recording this on May 6th, 2025. Obviously, a lot has changed in terms of nonprofits that the government funds. The government probably has been historically the largest financier of the nonprofit space. Most notably, USAID $40 billion budget has been dissolved, as of this point. There was also the attempt to take away all government grants, which was later rescinded. So the nonprofit space is uh, a space with its hair on fire right now, so to speak.
Yeah.
What's really interesting, though, is that while private funding from individuals and corporations and foundations will never be able to match the spending power of the US government, nonprofits who know what they're doing are actually coming out pretty well right now. There's
Hmm.
this phenomenon called rage giving. Whereas if the government, either side of the American political dichotomy, does something that you don't like, you will then go out and you will personally finance organizations that are doing the things that you like. So
Hmm.
let's take the immigration space right now. don't like what the Trump administration is doing, well, then you will go and you will fund immigrants' rights organizations. So there is a counter balance to that. We saw that in 2016, we saw that in 2020, we're seeing it again in 2025. Um, the interesting thing, though, in this space, and most people don't realize this, is that only 2% of nonprofits ever exceed $1 million in annual funding, and
Yeah.
only 0.2 ever go above 10 million. What you have right now, Steve, is a contraction in the field. Um, and donors are giving to fewer organizations, but giving to them at higher levels. And the trick right now is for nonprofits who have innovative program solutions to also figure out how to fundraise better. Because the
Yeah.
big organizations might not always have the best programming, they've just learned how to fundraise. So, one of the things that we try to do is we try to help organizations that have the best, most innovative, most researched solutions that work and just add fundraising to their portfolio. Because whether the market is up or down, whether the political system is up or down, if you know how to ask for money, you can figure it out and you can grow and make your mark on the world.
It's interesting in preparing for this discussion today. I did run across that statistic that only 2% ever raise over $1 million, and my wife Sharon Anderson found started a foundation called the WAVE Foundation, and stood for Women Against Violence Everywhere. And over the course of that, she raised over $1.5 million. So it was so fun to tell her, I go, Sharon, you're in the top 2% of raising money, because I did not know that statistic. But so essentially, what you have is a whole lot of small nonprofits raising, I guess in dollars terms, smaller amounts of money to do work in their communities.
That's absolutely right. I'm just thinking through our client list right now. We have one that raises under 500,000 a year. They predominantly work in the international space, helping folks in rural Tanzania. And we're trying to help them get to that $1 million mark. We also have quite a few that are right at the 9.5 million, and they're trying to broach into the top 0.2% of nonprofits by
Hmm.
breaking that $10 million mark. And obviously, just like in business, there's different organizational um, trends that exist in those different size organizations. So we're trying to help them organize, create the culture, create the systems to scale to their next levels.
Is it true? I've heard, and don't know if this is true, so tell me if I'm right or wrong, that in the United States, nonprofits and raising money for nonprofits is a little bit unique to our country, in the sense that we do it at a much higher level than, say, other countries, other European countries, other countries around the world. It's more a part of our culture. Is that true?
It is mostly true. So if
Hmm.
you look at giving per capita from individuals, the United States is always in the top 5 to 10 of that.
Yeah.
Interestingly, Indonesia is always the most generous country. Um, I've never quite been able to figure that out. I think it has something to do with kind of deep roots in Islam and required giving and things like that. But the US population of individuals gives over $550 billion every
Yeah.
year.
Wow.
$550 billion. It is a
Yeah.
very, very generous population. And that transcends political party affiliation, it transcends racial and ethnic identifications. The American culture is a very generous one by and large.
Yeah. And is it also true that what I've heard is that people with less means, so more on the lower end of the economic spectrum, actually give more per capita than the
They give more per
rich
capita.
people? Yeah.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, that's kind of shocking, because you think in the fundraising, oh, these are all, billionaires and millionaires that are, giving money to these foundations, which I'm sure is true in nonprofits, but there's a lot of giving at the small local level too, of people that give a little.
That's absolutely right. And organizations that develop healthy fundraising programs, they use it all. They attract small and mid-sized donors and they celebrate them. They don't marginalize the $25 gift.
Yeah.
They create products and messaging and deliverables, for it. They celebrate the $1,000 to $10,000 gift, and they create messaging and products and communities for it. The healthiest nonprofits work up and down the giving pyramid and realize that it takes people of all walks of life and all means to advance a mission forward.
So now your role in all this is that if I had a nonprofit or a foundation and we wanted to improve our fundraising capabilities and so on, we would hire you as a consultant to say, okay, this is how you do it. This is who you contact. So is that your role in all this?
Yeah, that's our role. We come in and we start by doing an evaluation of past fundraising performance. We think the past is just as much of an indicator as your future, as whatever new strategic plan you come up with. And then we help you for your unique situation, develop the strategies that we think are going to help get you to the next level. And one of the things about our firm that I like and why we created it this way is that we are bringing on staff and other consultants that are what I call fundraisers in the trenches. We don't like a lot of ivory tower thinking. We're not going to give out notebooks that are 300 pages of stuff you're never going to look at. We help you figure out, hey, how do you get to the next level? And we roll up our sleeves and help our clients figure that out.
Yeah, yeah, that's really interesting. So is it also true? I think I read somewhere where like it's 55 or 60% or something like that where people that donate to a nonprofit don't come back and donate again. So you have this high turnover. You don't have your regular customer that just keeps giving year after year after year. Is that true?
That is 100% true. And I think it's the saddest statistic in the fundraising space that
Hmm.
55 to 60% of your donors leave every year. And it's entirely preventable, Steve. When you,
So tell us how. Why?
yeah,
How
yeah.
do you prevent that? I mean,
So let,
in a nutshell.
in a nutshell, so there's three reasons why donors leave organizations. Okay, one is they have a life event that happens.
Hmm.
They lose a job, they get transferred out of the city, they move, somebody has a terminal diagnosis or a serious diagnosis in the family, they die. There is nothing the nonprofit can do to control those outcomes. Okay, uh, but nonprofits who stay close to people when they go through a life event, they win them back when that life event has have moved on. That's
Hmm.
number one. Stay close. Number two, why do people leave organizations? Because the nonprofit didn't tell them how the money was spent.
Hmm.
So you're a high net worth individual, you give 50, 75, 100 grand to a nonprofit. Yeah, most of them are going to thank you, even though you'd be surprised how few actually do a good job, of it. But
Hmm.
they don't tell them in really simple, real terms how the money was spent. And so what does that do? It breaks trust. And so you're going to go and you're going to find somebody else or look for somebody else who will tell you how the money is being spent. People want to know at the end of the day when they write a check or hit a wire transfer, button from their bank account, that money is going to change something in the real world. You have to report in ways that people understand, not in PhD speak, but in ways that people understand that you use that money to make a positive impact in the world. And the third reason people lapse, and this again is entirely within the nonprofit's control, they don't know they lapsed.
Hmm.
As a nonprofit, you are more focused on them than they are focused on you. They have life and businesses and jobs and kids and commutes and families. They're not thinking about you every single day. So if you're not staying in touch with them, they think that they gave 3 months ago when the reality is it was 18 months ago, just because
Yeah.
they're busy and that's how life works. So those final two, they don't know where their money's going and they don't realize they're lapsed. You can control that by talking to people more and updating them more and sending them, emails and reports and materials.
Yeah.
Nonprofits that do that start to get retention rates in the 75, 80, 90%. And that's how you grow because obviously it's cheaper to keep an existing donor or customer than it is to go find a new one.
Yeah. And what about the donor that, my limited time on boards, nonprofits and whatever, but you always get that person who, well, I don't want my money going towards operations. I want it going towards the sexy, trendy thing that, whatever. But we all know that organizations have to function to be able to provide that service. So that's probably a bit of a dance as well to make sure that
Oh
you,
my goodness. It's
yeah,
a huge dance. The interesting thing is that there's a sweet spot in terms of the operations and overhead.
yeah,
Organizations that spend too little on it, they actually don't grow because they never invest in the things they need to, marketing, communications, fundraising, programs. Organizations that spend too much on it, because some have spent too much, the 50, 60% overhead organizations,
yeah,
they end up collapsing, usually in scandal,
yeah,
because, the CEOs are living like extravagant lifestyles, right around 30%, you know, 25 to 40%, right in there. Organizations that invest that money back into building their own competencies and capabilities, they have better programs and they have better systems to help them go get more dollars. Uh, if every donor out there realized that that was necessary, a lot of nonprofits would be doing a lot better work.
yeah, yeah. So when I think of building these teams within a nonprofit to fundraise and run the company and do all that, one thing we know is that, teamwork doesn't do well with a lot of uncertainty, and it's kind of an uncertain path, right, in a nonprofit because you just never know whether the money's going to be there, whether it's going to come in. You can't count on it. You can't, really budget it, or can you?
You absolutely can. Okay. The world is very uncertain right now. I was leading fundraising at a nonprofit. I was there for 10 years, and it was focused on two things. One was global humanitarian work, and the other was refugees and immigrants in the US. And 2017 to 2020 was a very uncertain time when you work in the refugee and immigration space, kind of the first Trump administration. Then you have the pandemic. Okay. Then you had the Afghanistan withdrawal situation with a huge influx of refugees coming in, all uncertain. You have to find ways in the midst of all of that uncertainty to keep the staff, to keep the leaders sometimes focused on the things that they can control. Okay. So, what can you control? You can control how many conversations you set up every single week. You can control your show up in those conversations, meaning how you present yourself, the stories that you tell. If you focus on the small set of things that we can actually control in the world and organize the team, measure the team around doing them and doing them well, you are able to actually create your own trend line in the nonprofit space. So that organization, we grew private fundraising from $10 million, from under 10 million to over 40 million in that period of time.
Wow.
We never measured for the fundraisers, for their lead indicators, more than seven things at a time. We kept it very focused. What can they actually control in the midst of, upheaval during the pandemic, upheaval during, massive swings in our public policy? What can we actually control? And then we help them when they made presentations, when they had conversations by practicing over and over and over again. How are they going to do that? How would they tell a story? How would they ask an open ended question? Uh, and when people focus on those things that they can control and they do it well, amazing, amazing things happen. When the inverse is true, when we focus and get tunnel visioned on all the things we can't control, like tariffs or the market right now, we just spin out of control. We get anxious and we just kind of flounder and grab at anything that moves. So the fundraisers and the organizations that are very specific and focused, they do quite well. And the ones that can't, nail themselves down, they end up being the ones that can't project their revenue into the future.
So, would your typical client relationship be that my nonprofit would hire you to help us, improve our fundraising capabilities? And then would you just come in and do the strategy and then train the people on how to do it and whatever, and then you leave, or are you with that company for years or ongoing?
Yeah, so right now our average lifespan is 12 to 18 months with clients. We come in and we do it in really two phases: the strategy formation phase, and then the implementation phase. And the implementation phase is what I like most because humans in general have this problem where we know what we need to do, but we struggle to do it. And you need
Yeah.
somebody, usually, whether it's exercise, diet, whatever it is, we know what we should do and what's good for us, but we don't actually do it. So I like to spend my time on the implementation side of things, helping people develop the muscle to follow through on the things that they know are good and helpful for their organization. And like any good thing in life, whether it's exercise or diet or starting a farm, it takes a while to get into those patterns and rhythms and to get them deep enough into organizational culture that you can leave and have a high degree of confidence the organization is going to stick with it for the future.
And do a lot of these nonprofits, do they have kind of a lifespan, where they just go for a period of time and then, maybe they run out of mission or they run out of money or they run out of people and they go away? Or do most of these nonprofits continue on year after year, decade after decade?
Most of the people that I engage with, they go on year after year, decade after decade. We
Okay.
have one organization right now, they're focused on solving water issues for an entire country in Central Africa. Their goal is to have that solved by 2030, and then they want to sunset, they want to be done. I
Mm.
find very few nonprofits like that. We have everything from startups to 20, 30 years old to we have one client that's 117 years old as a nonprofit. They
Mm.
always are finding problems that they can solve. And the interesting thing about nonprofits are they're like the little engine that could. They are solving problems that government can't get its arm around and that big business can't monetize. Our society needs them to do their work to solve some of these intractable things that we can't seem to figure out as a community.
And do you think with this government, you know, um, not funding, as much as they used to, or cutting back on that, or whatever, do you see that the private donations are going to go up, or do you think these organizations just have to figure out a way to do it with less?
It's a really interesting question. I think several things are going to happen right now. I think you are going to see contraction in the field. You're just going to have some organizations that can't make it because the pressure shock of losing so much funding so quickly from a government source was just too great for them.
Hmm.
You're going to see that. Then you're going to see a series of mergers and acquisitions. You're going to see an M&A cycle, just like you would in the for-profit space, come up where organizations, hey, you're really good at foundations, getting money from foundations and corporations. Hey, you're really good at doing major gifts and small and mid-sized donors. Let's form a new organization together or do a buyout so we can do something more. I think you're going to see a lot of that, and lots of conversations are taking place on that right now. Nonprofits don't have a playbook for that like the for-profit space does.
Yeah.
So usually it's much messier. And the third area is you're going to see a lot of invention right now, um, where organizations realize, hey, the government funding is not coming back like it used to be, at least not anytime soon. And so we need to be very um, creative. We have the same problems to solve, and those problems just got bigger. We have quite a few food banks. Um, Government funding for food banks went down as well as SNAP benefits. So the people that they serve actually have more now than they did before. So, okay, how do we do more with less? And I think, really thoughtful leaders are going to use this time to create solutions that they might not have thought of 6 months ago.
So I don't want to make this political, but I do feel like I want to ask this question. So, uh,
I'm trying to do the dance because
I don't want it to be political, but my question is: do you think there is some abuse and some waste and some, taken advantage of and whatever going on, or do you think that's just a bad rap that's put on that group of organizations?
I think it's a both and. One of
Okay.
the things that I hate about our current cultural moment is that we don't have the ability to hold things in tension and to get a nuanced answer or solution set for it. Jim Collins calls this the power of the and, right?
Hmm.
You can have high profits and you can have great organizational culture. Um, I'm a big believer in holding things in paradoxical tension. When I look at the nonprofit space, and I'm in suburban Washington, D.C., is there waste? 100% absolutely. But there is waste everywhere. If you go to the for-profit space, is there waste? Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
Um, the answer to solving for that, I think, is not to move quickly and break things. This isn't a tech Silicon Valley startup, it's actual, people's lives. I think the answer in that is to create a more nuanced solution set and to roll that out with a degree of intensity, but in a way that respects people's humanity. So I don't think it's this
Yeah.
either or, both and. I think there's a third way in the middle to help with this. I have seen nonprofits do more on a shoestring. I've also seen nonprofits be incredibly wasteful. There's not a
Yeah.
one size fits all narrative. I think it's very situational. And I think that's where we have to be really careful in how we develop both public policy solutions, but also solutions in our own local communities as well.
Yeah. Well,
Hey,
let's
did I thread that
no,
political
that
needle okay?
beautifully, beautifully, beautifully. Maybe you should run for office, right?
Never, never.
So let's talk a little bit about the businesses themselves now. You brought in and you said that you train people and you help them with strategy and whatever, and you also you need to help people with their team building. So what's your advice on team building? How do we become better teams? What do we do?
Yeah. It all starts with the leader. Okay. Speed of the leader, speed of the team. And in the nonprofit space, one of the trends that you see is that people ascend to leadership through, two or three pathways. And it kind of sets the trajectory for the organization. One, they come from the outside, the business world, and they come into a nonprofit. Usually that is incredibly jarring for both the nonprofit and the for-profit leader that comes in. I
Okay.
used to work for two guys that were big at Arthur Anderson before that situation, and then one went on to help found Accenture, and then in their sunset years came and worked at the nonprofit that I was working at. They said it was the hardest job they ever had. The accounting rules were different, the cycles were different. So that's one pathway. The other pathway is that they come from the program side. They have invested themselves into a community, and now they're tasked with, and usually that community is probably, at least in my world, fairly impoverished, or living through cycles or systems of injustice. When that happens and you go from that world living day in and day out with your program participants to having to wheel and deal with high net worth individuals, those CEOs really have another set of challenges, which is jarring for them and the organization.
Hmm.
I think it's very important for nonprofit organizational culture to not demonize the donors. You get that a lot in the nonprofit world. If these rich folks would just, insert what the nonprofit wants to say.
Yeah.
Or if the fundraisers would just understand the programming, or if the little nonprofit folks would just understand what we learned in the world of, big business. All those narratives are false. I think the key to developing a healthy nonprofit culture is really humility, the
Hmm.
recognition that you have as a leader something to contribute, but you don't have everything to contribute. You need a team around you who has different lived experiences than you do, including, the experiences of the population that you serve. And when organizations are led by people who have a true sense of humility and a true sense of curiosity, inquisitiveness about learning new things, I think that really sets the foundation to create something beautiful in the
Hmm.
organization. When you come in with a lot of know-how from either your vertical in the nonprofit world or outside the nonprofit world, and you see everything through a lens that might not be the right prescription, you know, uh, you're not going to get the right image of exactly what's happening. So I think that humility, inquisitiveness, curiosity, ability to have conversations, put yourself in the shoes of other people is probably the one thing nonprofits and for-profits alike, need
Yeah.
in their leadership. And then that starts to funnel down. I'm not a huge fan of architecting and defining and painting on the wall what our cultural values are, because most people can't tell you, but they can tell you how they were treated in the last meeting. And they can tell you if their boss is supportive or not supportive of them. So I'm a big believer in, take your values and actually operationalize it into the culture, into your meeting cadence, into how you create measurements, into your performance reviews. Um, I think that actually changes dynamics more than three value statements that you paint on the lobby wall.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Well, that's true. And nonprofit as well as for-profit companies, that's for sure. It begs the question, though, that as you're talking there, it made me think. So, do you think that most CEOs, which is the leader of the nonprofits that you work with, are they business people that know how to run businesses? Or are they typically more someone that just so believes in the cause that they're the leader and they're driving this, and they need other business people around them to run a well-organized business?
I see it from both. I see both of those examples every week. We have a group right now that we're working with. The current CEO founded the organization. They have created the most cost-effective way to prevent cross-border human trafficking that's ever been created. Okay, it's really phenomenal. They're working in 17 countries around the world. The guy is like a programmer, like he knows how to do the work, and he is going through for him the hard work of learning how to operate it more business-like, to create stable revenue streams. I'm
Right.
working with another organization, and the CEO came from the for-profit world, and talks to donors like they're investors and wants to give them like the prospectus book. And people give out of a very different part of themselves than they invest.
Hmm.
Science has actually studied this. People make investment decisions with their analytical brain. People make giving decisions with their emotional brain, and then they check it against their rational analytical brain.
Yeah.
So that CEO is having to learn, like, okay, I need to tell a compelling story, and I need to, activate the emotion center of the brain, not just the business, center. So they all come in from different walks of life and perspectives and have their own journeys ahead. And that's what I like about my work, is that it's not the same every day. If this was rinse and
Yeah.
repeat, I'd get bored and I'd probably spend more time on the farm than in the business. I like that it's new and you have to find solutions for whatever's in front of you.
Yeah, yeah. No, it comes down to, again, there's, very similar, running a company is running a company, and understanding the different personality types and who you're talking to and what language to use that resonates with them. It's going to be different from one person on your team to another, and from one donor to another. Sometimes people need that data and the analytics and whatever. And
Mhm.
some people just need to say, it makes me feel good. And so here's a great story as to what your dollar just did for somebody. So I'm sure that coaching your teams and training your teams, you have to um, make sure that they understand the nuances, and then have the ability to go in both directions on that.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. So, um, just tell us a little bit about your philosophy between, as far as
Hmm.
building these leadership teams, and building something that's going to work for your clients.
Yeah. So the first thing I do work on is the leader. We've talked about that. Um, the second thing that you need to do to embed culture in is you need to build trust. Okay.
Yeah.
Now these could sound like huge platitudes, and to a certain degree they are, but they also work. Um, the staff, the donors need to trust the leaders. They need to trust the operations of the organization, and they need to trust each other. And the only way that happens, generally for humans, is face-to-face time. Okay. Um, do I know the person in front of me? Do I have a sense that they are a trustworthy individual? If something bad were to happen to me, could I depend on them?
Mhm.
So we have found that in many of these teams, particularly post-pandemic, that they don't get together in person. It's completely virtual. And I'm a big fan of virtual. I loved not having to commute, downtown, during the pandemic. It made my life
Yeah.
so much richer. I got to spend more time with my kids. It was wonderful. But you need to be in the same room and be able to eyeball each other. And so we work with the teams to figure out, how do we do that and create those good rhythms of being in person? The same with the donors. The donors will tell you, I like the virtual thing. It takes less time. But their behavior, getting into a little bit of behavioral economics, is different. When they're in person with you, the checks get bigger. Okay.
Hmm.
So what they tell us and what they do are different. So you need to look at that. Um, the other thing that I have found with teams is that in the nonprofit pressure cooker, where's the next dollar come from environment, celebrating wins is incredibly important. When you are trying to solve hunger or water issues or any big issues that nonprofits deal with, the challenge in front of you is really an insurmountable one. You need to embed celebration into the culture, whether it's in fundraising or programming. People need to feel, both your donors and your staff, that they're actually making a difference. We did cheesy things to celebrate wins at my last 9 to 5. It was a global organization, and we had a culture of creating celebration videos that we would share on Slack or Teams. So when somebody had a big win, the leader would then assign it to a different person on the team, right? Because you shouldn't brag about yourself. And that person would make a video celebrating the win of somebody else. That practice did more to shift teamwork than anything else I think I ever did, because people wanted to be celebrated themselves and they wanted to
Sure.
celebrate others. And it took away any, sense of internal competition from an unhealthy place to a really healthy place.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot more teaming happen after that, which in sales or fundraising teams is always a challenge. You have your territory. You don't want to bring others into it because you think it will make you look weak. But when people team, better things happen. So
Absolutely.
those are some of the things that we see working right now.
Well, it's just human nature. I don't care who you are, whether you're extrovert, introvert, whatever. Uh, you want to know that you made a difference. I mean, to me, that's pretty. As I coach leaders as well, you just need to make sure people hear about and understand when they have made a difference, because really that's what it's all about. If you feel like you're making a difference in someone's lives or in your company or helping people that need help, you got to feel good about what you're doing, I think.
That's absolutely right. And different people feel good about different things. I'm very happy at the end of the day to say, hey, did I, if I was in a nonprofit, did I raise the amount of money this week that I needed to raise or start the number of conversations? I'm happy. James is happy. Another person, it needs to be story based. Okay. Did I impact a person's life? I need to be reminded of that story. And in knowing your team members so you can show them that they made a difference that day or that week in a way that they can receive is another really big part of this.
Yeah, yeah. And we've talked a lot about this on this program, and that's where a good storyteller comes in, somebody who can tell a good story and create a vision for people and share that story with others, helps inspire and motivate them. And so, I think that's one of the crucial leadership skills is to be a good storyteller.
I mean, 100%. I can't put more exclamation points onto that, Steve.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about too. Now, we talked about how you come in with strategy to fundraise and help companies. Do you also provide coaching services? Do you coach leaders on how to be better leaders and things like that?
Yeah, so we don't have a leadership part of our practice, but we have a fundraising for leaders part of our practice.
Okay.
And when you think of, the CEO or executive director is always going to be the chief fundraiser. Okay. People need to know that the top person is somebody that they can trust. And when you're talking about big dollars, that person needs to be in the equation of the gift solicitation.
Hmm.
And so we have developed some content and some identified some roadblocks that people face when they take on that CEO role that keeps them from being great fundraisers. And we help coach them through how to break through that. I'm actually
Okay.
going to look at my whiteboard. I have it all outlined there right now. But a lot of people feel a huge degree of anxiety when they're asked to go and meet somebody for dinner and ask them for a check, at the end. Um, and a lot of that has to do with the own internal story that they're telling themselves, right? Um, what they believe to be true about themselves, how they want to be perceived, what they wish was true about themselves. We help them deal with that anxiety and help get them to a place of acceptance. Hey, this is actually part of the job. I have to do it.
Yeah.
Um, that's a good first step, but we then need to take that acceptance and turn it into action. Hey, I'm going to do something about this. And then we need to take that action and get them to accelerate that. And then we need to get them to become an exemplar, in the area. So we walk them through that and have modules around it. Um, and I found the best way isn't actually to show them the framework, it's just to walk them through it in their real life situations and scenarios. So they get, comfortable in their own skin, uh, being out there and telling the story of the organization and asking for funds.
That's great. So what's the story behind Kipos? What does Kipos mean, and why did you name your company Kipos?
Okay, so this actually goes back to where we started our conversation. Back in 2020, when my kids and I started that first garden at our old house, it became a family pastime. And we all really learned that we love making beautiful things in the world.
Hmm.
Fast forward 2 years from that in 2022, when we started the Kipos Group, um, we had a contest with the kids. Hey, what do you think we should name this? Every name and kids come up with crazy random names, right?
Right, right. I'm sure. I'm sure.
Um, um, my daughter wanted, I mean, she was 6 at the time, wanted to name it the Good Weed Company. And mom and dad told her we couldn't do that. And she's like, why? And we're like, we'll explain it to you later,
So yeah, so
sweetheart.
it's got a double
Uh,
meaning there, right?
double meaning there.
Yeah.
Um, all the names that the kids came up with, except for just the crazy ones, all had to do with gardening and taking and creating something beautiful in the world. It
Yeah.
became a really good part of our family, identity. And so my wife actually was the one that came up with Kipos. She was like, you need to make sure it's not too gardening. You're not like a lawn care, company.
Right, right.
And so Kipos is the Greek word for garden.
Oh,
Because what we're
really?
really trying to
Okay.
do is we're trying to help these nonprofits create, um, something beautiful for their staff, for their donors, for their program participants. It also is, we're people who try to follow the teachings of Jesus. And there's this parable that he gave in the New Testament where a farmer goes out and plants a garden. And the smallest seed that they plant in the garden, in the kipos, it actually uses that word, is the mustard seed. And it grows into one of the biggest trees, which provides sustenance for all the birds and animals. And we want to be a company that creates beautiful things, but helps nonprofits and even our own staff um, by nourishing them and by creating something that provides for their needs.
Yeah. Well, the analogy makes sense. I mean, creating something out of something small and growing it, nurturing it, and then benefits all. I mean, the analogy's right on. So that's awesome. Well, James, in anticipation of our discussion today, is there anything that I haven't covered or haven't asked you about that you want to be sure to get into the program today?
Hmm. I would say to your audience, okay, if you're not already invested into a nonprofit that is changing the world in ways that you want to see made more beautiful, I would challenge people to do it. Okay.
Hmm.
Your audience is full of leaders out there. Okay. Whether it's giving, whether it's volunteering, whether it's joining a board, we are all inundated, back to our comments on our society right now, with messages that are trying to divide people. Both sides of the political spectrum do it. Find something that you care about and invest your heart and soul and your dollars into it and try to make it better, and do it by getting off the screen, getting off social media, and just going out there and being with real people in real life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. Well, at this point in the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question. And that question is, in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
Hmm. So many people think about leading as leading others. And one of the things that I've learned in the past 20, 25 years of being a leader is that it is just as much about leading yourself as it is about leading other people. Um, and yes, do all the hacks, eat healthy, exercise, drink lots of water, all that good stuff. But don't forget to dive into your own narrative. Don't forget to understand what motivates you and find ways in that that you can marry your story with the story where you serve yourself, your family, and the people you're trying to lead.
Yeah, well said. So if people do want to reach out to you and say, "Hey, I was inspired by your discussion today, and want to engage your group in some way, shape, or form," how would they do that?
Yeah, there's two ways to do that. The first is our website, thekiposgroup.com. Kipos is Kipos, thekiposgroup.com. The second is LinkedIn. I do all of my own LinkedIn. There's no team or people doing it behind me. So James Misner on LinkedIn, and I respond to all of the direct messages that I get on there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, James, this has been a pleasure. It's been great talking to you, and I learned a lot. Nonprofits certainly provide a service that we should all embrace and all realize that makes our lives and communities better. So appreciate all the work you do, and thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Okay. Well, take care and have a good rest of your day. Hopefully, we'll see you down the road someday.
Absolutely.
Bye bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.